Friday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope your weekend is off to a great start. Thanks for joining us, Browns. Some time off before next week's mandatory mini camp. That will be Tuesday through Thursday next week. Rich Eisen, a guy on NFL Network, his best case scenario for the Browns in 2024. This from the Rich Eisen Show.
Deshaun Watson returns to his form, and he's a finalist for the most valuable player.
Okay.
Nick Chubb wins comeback player of the year.
That would be nice.
And then Myles Garrett leads the league in sacks. Again, I'm not going defensive player of the year. That's for you, JJ. And guess what? They win the division. First time since 1989. They win their division.
The number.
And they're the ones who eliminate the Chiefs. And it does. Deshaun Watson, let's say he goes up by like 24, holds on to that lead in Arrowhead, and wins the Super Bowl.
Oh, my.
The Browns get their Super Bowl.
Wow. Down to Armageddon.
I'm telling you, you think the Browns can't win the Super Bowl this year as a best case scenario, you got to check yourself.
Wow. With that, let's welcome in G. Bush, 92.3 The Fans of the Barbershop, also the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Best case scenario, absolutely, is that the Browns win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, listen, I ran across this clip and I talked about it, on another blog, and I said, well, let's look at this. Best case scenario, you take a look at what NFL finalists for the MVP award, what they usually traditionally do. You go back and look through the last 5 or 6 MVPs. You take a look at Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, guys like that. We're looking at you throwing for at least over 4,000 yards and at least over 30 touchdowns. That's just the bare minimum. If you look over the last 5 years, you just average the top quarterbacks. You take a look at comeback player of the year. Generally speaking, that is a quarterback award. Over the last 5 years, you take a look at the quarterbacks who have been involved with that, and you take a look at actually Joe Flacco won that award for the Cleveland Browns last year. If Nick Chubb wins comeback player of the year, he's going to have to be putting up some pretty monster numbers coming off a knee injury. So that I would be willing to wager he's going to at least have to have over 1,000 yards and almost double-digit touchdowns in his comeback year to be comeback player of the year. And if you look at the guys that are the top guys that lead the league in sacks over the last few years, we've had a couple of times where T.J. Watt has had 22 sacks. You have multiple guys that are over 18, 19 sacks. So that puts Myles Garrett, if he leads the league in sacks, that puts you anywhere from 18 to 20 sacks in the same year. So if all three of those things happen, and you telling me Deshaun Watson gets 4,300 yards and about 35, 36 touchdowns, Nick Chubb, in limited duty gets over 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns, and Myles Garrett has 18 to 20 sacks, Cleveland Browns are definitely in the Super Bowl. I'm willing to wager that's a very easy way to look at it. With that type of production and not even counting anything else, I wouldn't be surprised if the Browns are in the Super Bowl.
So last night, Kevin Stefanski, a foundation that he started, the Family Keepers Foundation, an event over at Cleveland Browns Stadium. And Deshaun Watson was there and part of the event. The thing that was it was cool to see the way the younger kids kind of responded to the Browns quarterback, as you would expect it. G. Bush, the reason I show this, Deshaun Watson is getting more and more comfortable in the community. He's doing more and more of these things, and that's a good sign. That more than anything, will lead him to be successful on the football field as long as he can stay healthy. Right now, if he stays healthy, I think he has a big year.
I completely agree. I completely agree on two fronts. I agree on the fact that he's getting he's getting more acclimated in the community. And somebody sent me a post on Twitter, and they said, after the thing was over, after Kevin Stefanski was done talking, he showed me a clip where all the kids ran up to Deshaun Watson.
Yep.
And, for those kids, it's always something to be said about kids, because kids, they don't care about a lot of stuff that people print. Like, they don't care about, they're having a good time. And they're excited that he's down there showing them some, just showing love and just giving his energy and time and energy to younger kids. And so that, it's natural for them to have that type of reaction. For me, I think more than anything, I think Deshaun Watson, I've said it before all offseason, I think he's the most comfortable he's been. I think this is the first year he actually has felt like a person who's a part of the community, a part of the city, and not an outsider. I think before in the last 2 years, he's felt more on the attack in terms of, off-field stuff, being injured, not knowing what his, week-to-week status is going to be with the shoulder. I think this year is the year where he finally feels comfortable to say, I'm comfortable. The team is mine. The locker room's behind me. My coach is behind me. They just got new contracts. And so now it's time to put everything together. It's time to, put my best foot forward. And I'm standing on that as well. There's nothing that I think is holding Deshaun Watson back. And I think he has a great year. And get ready for the comments like this. Get ready for it. Well, listen, Deshaun Watson is playing so well right now. I mean, who could have guessed? Who could have guessed he was going to play this well? Nobody. No, you didn't think so. I just want this to be on tape. So
I'm
we
with
can
you.
Say, no. We talked about it here.
Yep, I'm with you. All right, along those lines, this one I disagree with, but we let everybody have their voice here. So ranking NFL head coaches and quarterback duos for 2024. This is from Sports Illustrated. Chiefs 1, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Ravens 2, John Harbaugh, Lamar Jackson. I can't argue with those. Rams 3, Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford. That's fine. They got the Browns at 21. Kevin Stefanski and Deshaun Watson, 21. Stefanski, 19th ranked head coach. Watson, 23rd ranked quarterback. Both of those are too low. Stefanski has proven to be a sharp offensive mind with quality staff led by Jim Schwartz. However, Watson has been an unmitigated disaster since being acquired by the Texans. Well, suspension was longer than the Browns thought it was going to be, and he was injured last year. I don't know that he just hasn't played enough. It's not his fault. Not his fault at all.
I happened to run across that list, and it's crazy because you may be able to tell me this. Don't they have the Chicago Bears at 19?
Yeah, I think they do.
See, you see, this is where you lose credibility.
Yep.
In your publication, because you're telling me a team that has not won anything, a team that has been a disaster the last few years, a team that just ruined Justin Fields, and you keep churning through these quarterbacks, and a quarterback in Caleb Williams, who some think regressed last year in college, and you're telling me sight unseen, we've never seen you play, and you're telling me that the Bears coaching head coach and quarterback tandem is 19. See, this is why I can't listen. Sometimes I'm sorry. I just can't with that. On the fact that Kevin Stefanski is the 2-time coach of the year and him being at 19 is crazy. Like what are you watching? Are you watching the games? And sometimes, I when you get national publications and you do stuff like that, it's just like, you guys can't be watching football. Name me on a short list of all the coaches in the NFL who've won Coach of the Year. I can guarantee it ain't that many. But then go to it and say, how many of them won 2? And for you to be at 19 is ridiculous, especially when you're talking about a number 1 overall quarterback who's never played it down in this league. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Lists like this just get me up in arms. And sometimes I had to just tell myself, look, they're probably getting stats and somebody's handing them a portfolio of documents. And matter of fact, he might have not even wrote his own list. They might have had somebody write the list. He looks over it and he gets ready to go. I don't know what it is, but I challenge that person to any football person to say anything about that list and why it's even pertinent.
Buccaneers were 20 with a new head coach in Baker Mayfield. So again, yeah. All right. There's an agenda. There's clearly an agenda there. We'll leave it at that. All right. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for the first time today.
Yeah, this is Dan, the Mentorate, living in Florida. My comment today is on Jed Wills. Your program of the 6, you listed him on all the offensive ratings for our team. He was at a 54. Now, I don't know how you call that average. He was rated 28th, I think, in the league to the bottom, considering everything he quits on plays. He's always done that. My opinion is that he's not sufficient for the left tackle, the backside of the quarterback, to protect. I don't like Jed Wills too well at all, but just wondering what you guys think. Looks like a good season. Hopefully Watson stays healthy. Go Browns. Woof, woof.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. You know, the thing about Jed Wills is I think the Browns are higher on him than the fan base. And I keep coming back to this, G. Bush. I think he's an average left tackle. He's being compared to Joe Thomas, who he succeeded, and he's being compared to the 10th overall pick. And there was Tristan Wirfs, who was there, and the Browns took Jedrick Wills. There are a lot of things that are working against him. I think he's an average left tackle.
Yeah, I think that works against him, and it works that way in college, right? Look, you know, Isaac Okoro was taken 5th overall by the Cavaliers. When you got guys behind you that like Halliburton, who turns out to be an all-star, you judge Isaac Okoro a little bit more difficult, right? You a little more hard, right? I think one of the things that could help in perception becomes reality a little bit. And I talked to Joe Thomas about this. You know, sometimes Jed needs to just play to the end of the whistle. If he played to the end of the whistle, and I don't got a problem because, you know, the pass rushers that you got in this league are dynamic. Try, you know, from week to week, you got Myles Garrett, then you got TJ Watt, then you get Micah Parsons, and then you get, you know, there's guys that are freaks of nature out there. So I don't mind you getting beat. Here's the thing. People would have a higher bar for him and give him the benefit of the doubt if he just was like, listen, I got beat, but I went to the whistle. Hey, I missed my assignment. I blocked the wrong guy. I just kept going to the whistle and I found somebody to block. You know, so, you know, one of the things is, yes, he's being judged, you know, kind of as the 10th overall pick, and he's also being judged taken from Joe Thomas's position. You know, from the Browns standpoint, I think their calculus is this. We need 2 out of these guys to figure out what they're going to be, right? That's one of the things that they did with Jack Conklin, right? They gave him, you know, an extension. It was a head scratcher for me. But I've always thought all along, they were like, listen, we got DeJuan Jones. If DeJuan starts on the right-hand side, cool. Jed Wills and Jack Conklin have been injury prone. And so if we can find one of those guys to give us 8 games and the other guy give us 10 games or whatever the case may be, that's better and available than what we would have on the open market or somebody as a backup. So I think that's the way they look at it. They think that Jed is a serviceable tackle. And if he can not have any crazy penalties and he could just play to the whistle, I think his perception will be a lot better with the fan base.
All right, before we go to break, this is very interesting. So how much better are the Browns with Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry? Cleveland has won more games the last 4 years, 38, than they did the previous 8 years combined, 37. They've made more playoff appearances the last 4 years, 2, than they did the last 20 years combined, 1. So basically, G. Bush, here's the thing. They have earned the right, being Stefanski and Berry, to try to they've taken it from NFL joke to competitive. Now they've earned the right to take it from competitive to perennial contender. That's kind of the way I look at it. And that's what Jimmy Haslam writing the check is, all right, guys, your work's not done. You know, now we become consistent playoff is the goal.
And that's the hardest thing to do in all of professional sports. You take a look at baseball. I mean, year to year, you can get teams coming out of nowhere, right? Even when you could have the best team all year long in 162 games, and then guess what? You can get in the playoffs. You get a hot pitcher. Take a look at the Texas Rangers. They doesn't have anything of any note that people would. Oh my goodness, the Rangers are so great. It's the same thing. You know, you take a look at the NBA. You know, it's a long season. The Denver Nuggets lost to the Timberwolves. Denver looked like they were going to repeat, right? So there's a lot of things that's kind of fluky a little bit. But when you get to the NFL, like in every year, every game counts. And you gotta that next step is the hardest to take. And some teams never even get there. Look at Buffalo. Look, they feel like Buffalo is right there they feel like they're on the precipice. There's great teams, back in the day. And I just got off the phone before I got on with you guys. I was talking to my dad about, we was arguing about Hall of Fame stuff. And I just said, Jim Kelly, went to 4 straight Super Bowls, right? And that's a feat in itself. But he didn't win any MVPs. He didn't win any, championships, but he's a Hall of Famer because of how hard and difficult it is to get to that level of consistently making it to the Super Bowl. I've said this all the time, and this is wild. No matter how old you are, no matter how, long you've been watching the Browns or how many years you had season tickets, you could be 90 years old or you could be just born today. No Cleveland Browns fans has ever seen what the uniforms look like on Super Bowl Sunday. That's how hard it is to be a perennial, like every single year we in it. Nobody that I know has ever seen a Super Bowl. So that just, that's how big of a step it is to become competitive, to being perennial, because perennial Super Bowl contenders means you expect to be in the AFC Championship or contender for a Super Bowl every year. And we just ain't seen none of that. So it's a big step. And hopefully Stefanski and Barry can get us there.
G. Bush and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
We continue talking Browns with G. Bush from 92.3 The Fan and the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
My question is in reference to the offensive tackles coming back from injury. I believe they should have more players on the offensive tackles, I should say, on the practice squad. We had problems with the quarterback and the tackles. And lastly, I want to talk about this new kickoff scheme where here's more defensive ends than safeties or corners or receivers. I think quickness, speed is a virtue. So those are my two questions. This dubious and hopefully get some clarity on it. Thank you. Appreciate you taking my call.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. G. Bush, there are a couple of tackles on the practice squad, but obviously you want 2 of those 3 guys to be healthy enough to play. There's a significant difference even between, Jones and Wills and Conklin and James Hudson, let alone if you get back to the practice squad. Kickoffs are going to be interesting. Nobody is going to know until the regular season because nobody's going to show anything even in the preseason.
Yeah, kickoff rule. Bubba Ventrone was on like Cleveland Browns Daily, and he, they talked about, what could you expect to see in that situation, and he talked about it's going to be a lot of copycat stuff. There's an opportunity for teams to really excel in that position. And there's also an opportunity for you to, give up some plays and give us some touchdowns. So he said, as a special teams coordinator, it's going to be, the best of times, it's the worst of times to figure out what's going on. He said, there's going to be in the first few weeks, people copycatting and doing stuff. So I don't think anybody knows what honestly, that it's going to happen with the kickoff rules, right? I think we'll see some stuff. It might be the Wild Wild West the first couple of weeks, but, teams are usually good to kind of button things up and to really take away some of that stuff, especially if it's kind of gimmicky. And then everything will regress to the mean and you'll have to come up with a new way to impact the game on that side of the football. In terms of the offensive tackle situation. There just aren't that many big, skilled, powerful, intelligent football players at that size. That's why, generally speaking, those guys get paid a lot of money, especially left tackles, because it's a very rare position. Those guys, you can't grow them. They don't walk off the street. So I think the Browns are in a uniquely better position than a lot of other teams because they have three guys that they believe can be a starter. You found a diamond in the rough with DeJuan Jones. He's a massive guy. I think he's penciled in as a starter. Jack Conklin, you can bring him in a little slower because he was injured, and I think he had multiple things going on with him and his injuries. And then, Jed Wills, you have him. He has experience at left tackle. So, for right now, you got three good tackles or three tackles that could play in the league. Whatever level you may decide who's better at what, but they got three guys that have played some minutes in this league. And so I think that's a luxury. One of those guys is not going to start, but, you won't be in a position like you were last year where, guess what? You had to have somebody step in, and obviously DeJuan did that and did it at a high level. He got injured. So you always want to have some depth, and I think the Browns have some depth at those positions, and they're blessed to have three guys that they could potentially start.
So this one's from the 33rdteam.com. It's NFL players entering make or break contract seasons. One of them is the Browns' Elijah Moore. Despite lining up in the slot almost 80% of snaps, was more natural option as an intermediate route runner. Skill set wasn't what the Browns thought they were getting, but they made it work as Moore set career highs in key categories. Cooper and Judy will surely be bigger priorities. And Cedric Tillman and Jamari Thrash, David Bell will push to play with their varying skill sets. Moore might have got hurt as much as anybody by the four different quarterbacks as well.
Yeah. He's really yet to lock in with any specific quarterback. And I think one of the things that I think the Browns were a little alarmed at was the fact that, they had tapped him as a guy that was going to be in the backfield and run these gadget plays and run reverses and, be everywhere where people would have to account for him. And one of the things that you started to see as the season developed was he's not a runner. Like, that's not his game. Like, he's not a guy that's going to have the vision on these end rounds or in the backfield to see holes where you can cut back and run. There was a few times he ran into some people where you're like, wow, why don't you just cut back right there? He didn't have those ball skills. Then, he wasn't a guy who was a outside receiver where people told us that, he could play not only in the slot, but he could play in the X spot. He could play Z a little bit. He could play a little bit of everything, but he more seemed like he was just a intermediate route runner, drag, slants, things underneath. Didn't have the long speed to take stuff off, the top off the defense. So to me, I think that the Browns tried him in a lot of different ways. I think he was hurt by the fact that he never really got a rhythm. And I think they may have not used him in the way that he needs to be used as a receiver to be a very like an impact player. Then you go out and you have Mari Cooper. You still go out and you get Jerry Jeudy. They got Thrash that they brought into the mix. They brought some other free agents that can really move. They got the Landers kid. He's another guy that they brought in. Played for Georgia, went to Toledo, came back, played for Arkansas. So they got a lot of guys. Michael Woods. They got a lot of dudes in the mix. And it just seems like they're going to give some opportunities to those guys too. So if he's a guy that you can look at it and say, hey, if he doesn't stick here, it could be a person that kind of bounces around a little bit. You don't want to be the person that, like, you just got in the league, you're with the Jets 2 years, you're with the Browns 2 years, then now you're off to another team. You really want to put a nice resume together, a nice, body of work this season together. So now when somebody goes out and you hit free agency, they're bringing you in as a priority, not like we're kicking the tires to see if we can get anything out of Elijah Moore.
All right, before I let you go, along those lines, wide receivers, notable contract extensions. This is from PFF. Justin Jefferson, 4 years, $140 million. A.J. Brown, 3 years, $96 million. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 4 years, $120 million. Jalen Waddle, 3 years, $84.75 million. Devontae Smith, 3 years, $75 million. Nico Collins, 3 years, $72.5 million. Michael Pittman, 3 years, $70 million. Mike Evans, 2 years, $41 million. Amari Cooper, his contract is up. These numbers have to affect what he wants, what his side wants. Do you think there's a way the Browns find a way to keep Amari Cooper, or is he going to be demanding too much money, do you think?
Well, listen, I think Amari Cooper is a smart individual. He understands what type of time that the Browns are on. I think the Browns made it easier for them to go get retain the services of Amari Cooper, because I feel like they understood what the market was, and they preemptively signed Jerry Jeudy. His deal doesn't look that crazy at this point, because now you still get a guy that's relatively in his prime, and they're betting on pulling a David Njoku, which is, hey, we like what David is doing, we like your skill set, and we believe that with our infrastructure and with the coaching staff we got, we can develop you for what we like. So we're gonna give you this contract sight unseen, hoping that, guess what, the market goes up, the money at other position continues to go up, and they got you at a bargain. So for Amari Cooper, I look at the last one down to Mike Evans, 2 years, $41 million, right? I wouldn't be surprised if I see something like that, especially if Amari Cooper has another season where he has 1,100 yards, 1,200 yards, somewhere in that realm. I wouldn't be surprised if you see something along the lines of a 2-year deal that may be worth, somewhere maybe 30, 32 million, 35 million, somewhere in that, where you get another good chunk of change. It's a decent deal. If you play really well and you outlast with the life expectancy of a receiver, and you continue to put up these numbers, you might be able to get another nice 1-year deal, right? So Mark Cooper's made a lot of money in this league. He's made some money with Dallas. So I think the Browns will make it work. Mark Cooper is a guy who seems to like Cleveland, seems to like playing here. So they've done some deals where they've been able to keep Nick Chubb. And I've always said this too. Name one person that the Cleveland Browns didn't want. The Browns wanted that they didn't get, they didn't re-sign him. They've done it with a lot of people. Even Zadarius Smith came back. So I think they got definitely a good chance of retaining Amari Cooper if he continues to play at a high level.
G. Bush, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, G. Bush.
All right, man. Have a good rest of your weekend.
Sounds good. G. Bush, make sure you check him out. 92.3 The Fans Barbershop, 8 until noon on Saturdays. Also on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, Monday through Friday, 11 until 1. It's going to do it for this segment. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, Brad Ward from the Orange and Brown Report and the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Chris Sims, former NFL quarterback. This is from NBC Sports Pro Football Talk, talking about game management with the Browns.
One thing I've always said about Cleveland is, like, remember last year I was always going, hey, rein it in with Joe Flacco. It can't always be that. It's going to come back to haunt us. I mean, he's going to throw 4 picks and do that. And there he was in the wild card game, falling down, throwing picks to everybody, right? I mean, so the game management, that is something I know you've heard me complain about Cleveland. And I know they got, the baseball analytics guys doing there. And from what we know, and Andrew Berry told us at the Combine, they're a team that's a little bit more into the analytic world than I think even the rest of the NFL. But what I find interesting is a guy like Vrabel, Mike. Vrabel, as we know, everybody's into analytics to agree, but awesome game planner on a week-to-week basis. and then awesome game manager, right? And that's where I wonder if he's going to have an effect every now and then, because there's a few points in, every few weeks where I go, Cleveland, why are you going for it here or doing that? You got this defense and blah, blah, blah. Why are you even opening the door? And maybe I think Vrabel can add some value in that department as well, because I think he's one of the best game managers in the sport.
Let's welcome in Brad Ward from the Orange and Brown Report and the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. And, when I heard Chris Sims talk about that, yeah, that is a strength of Mike Vrabel without question.
Yeah, it's interesting. Chris has been talking about this since late last year when he talks about the Browns about they're too aggressive, right? You need to play more into the defense. And kind of with Flacco, they were super aggressive, right? And so he talked a lot about that and that it was going to come back to bite him. And it kind of did on both sides of the ball. And he would talk about, so the interesting thing here, the question is, right, like, I didn't think when we first heard the stuff about Vrabel, Dave, that he was going to be out on the field interacting with players. That is amazing that he is, but I didn't expect that, right? So that's a huge bonus. That's awesome that he wants to get involved at that level as well. But will he be able to influence the actual game management, because they are so locked in on what the analytics tell them to do, Dave? So, like, will he be able to move them off that? At times, and I understand and I agree with a lot of the analytical decisions they make, but at times I wish they would every now and then have a feel for the game a little bit more, right? Like, yeah, it's okay to run it here on third down. You have a lead and kick it away to your defense or whatever, you know what I mean? Or not go for it here because you have a great defense. And I think that is more of a feel for the game thing. And at times, small criticism of Stefanski, I wish he would go with a little more feel for the game and less analytical. And I wonder if Vrabes will be able to move him in that direction. I kind of think not. I think they're kind of locked in on that, and that's kind of part of their philosophy.
I don't know that it will move them. I think they are more than willing to listen. I think they view all angles, but whether they decide to do that's another question. I know you wrote an article, and we always check these out with you. Things you think you know about the Browns. So I'll just run them down and you can go through them. Jameis Winston was the right choice. Jim Schwartz knows that he needs a secondary pitch, and the Mike Vrabel effect. So take us through those.
Yeah, so Winston is the right choice for a couple of reasons. First of all, we heard him speak, right? Like, he has embraced the role as the backup to Deshaun Watson. He's trying to pull him up with positivity and support at every level and talking about him and praising him. And it's just ideal, right? Like, he really, really gets it. And he's being a terrific teammate in that way. I don't think that's something that you would have gotten from Flacco, at least at that level, right? He's also 10 years younger and fits the offense better. And from, the small part that we've seen, he looks like he's throwing the ball well. But I think that if we're trying to put Deshaun Watson in the ideal position to succeed, Winston was a good choice. And I think he was the right choice, as he has kind of just taken on that role and embraced it. And I love that. So that's number one. Number two is, Schwartz. The baseball analogy is perfect here, and he loves his baseball analogies. But I think maybe we even used the baseball analogy with this before. The fastball. You need something to take people off the fastball, right? Smart coordinators, good quarterbacks. What the Texans did in the playoff game, they went back throughout the year, saw what worked against the aggressive defense, and they used it against them, with crossers and quick hitting stuff. And they were able to take the Browns' defensive aggression and attacking defense and use it against them. Now they have to have something else, right? Another answer. So, you got, as Schwartz was saying, he was calling it his change-ups, but anything, right? Just like a good pitcher, you have to have your fastball is only good as, the curveball that sets it up, right? Or takes somebody off of it. If you can't throw a curveball for a strike, then people are just going to sit on the fastball all day. And it's a great analogy to this situation. They have to have a secondary or tertiary option that will take offenses out of what is on film right now out there. And those are kind of answers to what the Browns have done. So it was interesting that he talked about it, because that's kind of what we've been talking about a lot this offseason. So it's great to know that he realizes that. And the Vrabel effect is amazing, right? So it's amazing he's on the field. He's interacting with players. He's, talking trash. He's coaching guys up. But he's also there for, a sounding board to Stefanski. They're putting in this new offense. How would you play this, Mike? He's ran his own defense in the NFL for years, right? How would you play this? How would you adjust to this? What would you do if we put this formation out there, or this shift, or this motion, or this concept? How would you adjust to it? Okay. What would give you problems in this situation? I mean, it's just an amazing resource. And same thing defensively. Him, Schwartz, Shane Bowen all work together on defense in Tennessee. They know what, he will be such a help in helping Schwartz and this defense and coaching them up in those secondary pitches or changeups. So the Vrabel effect is amazing, and what a resource.
So I know you also wrote an article. Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, they get the extensions. It's not a surprise. But they really have kind of stabilized. The franchise was a mess. I mean, earlier in the show we went through and delineated some of the differences. Take us through that article, and these are well-earned extensions.
They are. They had to be earned, and they came in lockstep, and they haven't, moved off of that. They've been very collaborative with each other. But Andrew Berry has kind of weaponized the salary cap in a way, using the money that the Haslams will allow them to spend to pay the most to players every season for the last couple of years, right? Like, they've figured out a way to manage the cap and manipulate it in a way that gives them an advantage in that way. And he's done a good job bringing talent in and extending them, and more Pro Bowlers than we've ever had, last year, 7 or 8 or whatever it was. And then Stefanski, of course, as much as he seems, like the right guy, and I've always been a big fan. I think he's a great play caller. He's great with sequencing. He's always one step ahead, but he's put up the wins. They have 2 11-win seasons. That's what it comes down to. They've earned it, and first guy to get his 5th year since Bill Belichick in '95. And it's amazing. It's a great moment for the Browns to kind of get, it's been 25, maybe even 40 years since they've had this kind of stability.
All right, before we go to break, some roster news. So it's official. Michael Hall Jr. signed his contract, so all the rookies are signed. In addition to that, the Browns signed a guard, Wyatt Davis, and they waive Jaden Peavy, because you got to keep it at it's 91 because you have the international guy, so it's 91 on the roster. But Wyatt Davis, a guard. So again, a young guy trying to fortify the interior. Wyatt Teller's getting older. Joel Bitonio's getting older. You want younger blood, younger big guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Big body from Ohio State. Played about 29 snaps at left guard. We'll see what they want to do with him. But, yeah, they're always churning the bottom of the roster, right? They're always going to be bringing younger guys in and sending guys out to see where they can improve every single corner of the roster. And that's one of the things that Barry has done in his time here, and he should get credit for that. But we'll see what he can bring. Feels like a camp body for sure, but nothing huge here. But another Ohio State guy, though.
Brad Ward from the Orange and Brown Report. All Eyes on Cleveland podcast and August upside. Take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
We continue talking Browns with Brad Ward from the Orange and Brown Report, as well as the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Mustafa, 15-year Browns fan. And I just have to comment on something that I noticed this year that most fans should really feel good about it, is that I'm noticing during the OTA films that there's a lot of camaraderie. There's a lot of brotherness. There's a lot of togetherness. And I've noticed this team is starting to gel together, not just on the field. This carries over into them just having a good personality together. And I'm really happy to see that. I think that's going to transfer onto the field, and there's going to be more unity this year. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Brad, I know it's still early. You certainly get that feel. And Jim Schwartz was that guy that kind of started that with the defense. I think Deuce Staley is very similar type of personality.
Yeah, so it starts with, it's the continuity first, right? Like, so I believe we saw this last year, right? Playing for your brother, playing for your teammate. They were, the sum is greater than all the cliches, right? They all were true last year about this team, and it's part of what made them really special. And so when you return 20 of 22 starters, right, and even your depth, all the way through the 43, a good majority of the guys are back. It's easier to recreate that camaraderie and recreate the buy-in when you have such a leadership core there, right? So you see it at OTAs. You do get that feeling from watching it. I think it's real. So it does have to carry over all the way through the Greenbrier. Every season is its own entity. We've talked about that. But it's easier to recreate when you have all these guys back who have been through it together, and they have pre-existing relationships. You know what I mean? So I certainly think that the caller is correct that you can see it.
All right. So I know you also wrote an article about some free agents. You went through and did the best at every position. We're going to look at the linebackers. And again, I'm not saying necessarily that they're going to bring in a linebacker, but there's Shaq Leonard, Zach Cunningham, Quan Alexander, Josh Woods. I think they're going to give Watson, the rookie Nathaniel Watson, and Diabate, another rookie, and Devin Bush, good hard long looks. But that might be an area that, if they don't see what they want to see, that they look to upgrade with a vet.
Yeah, it feels to me like they do. I think they want Watson to kind of take that talkie-talkie role a little bit, right? You're only in base for a few downs a game, but that requires that third linebacker, and then you're going to need depth, right? Like, it's not always going to be, JOK and Hicks out there as the two guys on the field. You're going to need more guys at some point during the season. So, Fields is in his fourth year, Diabate, like you're talking about, and Watson, all of these guys, and Devin Bush, who they signed, all of these guys they're going to give them their shot at it. But I wonder if at some point they don't look to bring in a guy like Zach Cunningham, who I think would really shore up that room. Cunningham has played with Schwartz and Vrabel in Tennessee. He knows the scheme. He's a very solid player. I think he would be, ideally, he would kind of slot everybody else in properly behind them in my mind. Like, if he was your third linebacker, and then, Bush or Watson was your fourth, and so on down the line, that would make more sense to me than maybe trying to get Watson to contribute right away.
So this one's from Sports Illustrated, NFL's worst offseason moves. Albert Breer, no team hiring Bill Belichick or Mike Vrabel as its head coach. And yeah, I agree. I can't imagine how Mike Vrabel didn't get hired as head coach. The fact that he's here, I'm glad he didn't, but I think he's a top 10 head coach in the NFL. I thought he was last year.
Yeah, I think he is, Dave. I think you're right. And people they missed on this one, right? And I think situationally, people had an idea of what kind of fit they want. A lot goes into those decisions. I've talked before on here, the benefit of taking a offensive mind as your head coach, as far as continuity's sake, not always having to replace that offensive coordinator. But Vrabel is a special guy, and Belichick is too. So You know, 10 years ago, if you would have said that, you know, Belichick was going to become available to be a head coach and nobody would hire him, you know, I would have fell out of my chair. But that's where we're at, I guess. So, you know, the trend is looking for the young offensive mind, right? And I think some of that got them overlooked. And it's probably he'll probably be top of the list, especially him staying attached. It helps him so much to be involved in the game from season to season. Dave, so much changes in the NFL. Trends, copycat, like Schwartz was talking about. 20% of the stuff that worked last year isn't going to work this year. We're throwing it out, right? Year to year, it changes so much in the league. So Vrabel being a part of it and remaining with his finger on the pulse of the league as a consultant with the Browns will probably have him be the first, I would imagine, the top candidate available next cycle.
Yeah, everybody's chasing the next young great mind, and that's one of the reasons I think we're seeing so much turnover year to year, because there are a lot of people that are missing on these coaching hires, which as long as the Browns are out of the head coaching business, we're happy guys without question. All right, mini camp starts Tuesday in Berea. What are you paying attention to closely, and is there anything you want to see, you need to see?
As much as we can, I'm excited to watch the younger wide receivers. So I'm very intrigued with Tillman, Thrash, Bell, Woods. Like that competition for 4 and 5 on the depth chart, and 4 really, who I think can be a contributor, you know, and be kind of maybe the guy that steps up in future years and becomes a part of the starting 3 there. Whoever that is, it starts with, you know, this right now. Like they need to perform now. And, you know, they've talked a lot about the freedom in the routes, the choice routes, the option routes, whatever you want to call them, right? That's one thing that Tillman has had a little struggle with, right? Athletically, he's there, but something that we saw last year, him get yelled at a few times or miss things on reading routes and stuff like that. So will that hurt him? Thrash is very intriguing to me. He looks, from the little bit we've seen, he looks electric. I think he will be a threat to be that 4th wide receiver. And then Mike Woods coming back is huge too. So that's a very intriguing position to watch for me. Who gets those roles, right? Hopefully Tillman can get it figured out. You know, I talked about linebacker depth. I'm excited to see some of the young players. The narrative with this has changed with this this team, Dave. It's no longer like we're not really like watching for the starters, but there's actually a lot of talent down the line on the roster. You want to see Miles Harden. You want to see Cam Mitchell. You want to see Juwan Briggs. These guys that are talented guys that aren't going to get a sniff of the field early going. But I want to see how they do. You know what I mean? And I want to see if they can be a part of the future.
Brad Ward, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Brad.
You're the best, Dave. Thank you for having me.
Brad Ward, make sure you check him out. Orange and Brown Report, always really good stuff. He is also the host of the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. We're going to take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we turn our attention to the Cavaliers. Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. We're talking Cavs coaches. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We turn our attention to the Cavaliers. A lot of questions going on. Will Donovan Mitchell agree to and sign the max extension that the Cavs offer him? Who will be the head coach? What does the roster look like? Start with the coaching search. These are guys that we know the Cavs are interested in talking to. Terry Stotts listed as a long shot. David Edelman, Kenny Atkinson, Chris Quinn, James Borrego, all assistants. Atkinson does have a little bit of head coaching experience. Then you go Johnny Bryant, Mike Inori, Dave Jorger, Alex Jensen, Steve Hetzel. The Cavs have come out and said they will not interview Frank Vogel, who was head coach of the Suns, as well as the Lakers recently. Let's welcome in Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Sam, what do they do? What are they looking for with their coaching search?
That's the question of the year, it seems like. There's a lot of different candidates, a lot of different styles of candidates, a lot of different, I guess the word, levels of experience. You have Kenny Atkinson, who you mentioned has head coaching experience with the Nets, and he went to the Clippers for 1 year after he got fired by the Nets. And if you remember, Kenny Atkinson got fired by the Nets, I think probably 3 days before the season shut down in 2020 because of COVID. So he got fired and it was yeah, we're shutting down the league anyway, so whatever. But then he went and coached with Doc Rivers of the Clippers for a year. And then he's been on Steve Kerr's staff ever since the last 3 seasons. So, he's got plenty of experience, plenty of winning experience. He's had opportunities before Kenny Atkinson, I believe a few years ago when James Borrego was let go by the Charlotte Hornets. Kenny Atkinson was pretty much named the coach of the Hornets and then turned it down, decided he didn't want it. So, hopefully with the Cavs, a similar situation wouldn't play out. But, James Borrego, of course, being another candidate, as you mentioned, coached the Hornets. He's now an assistant with David Griffin's New Orleans Pelicans under Willie Green. And James Borrego, in each of those last 3 years with the Hornets, the team won 10 more games. So his last 3 years, he compiled a total of 30 more wins than, his second season. So, and what did he get for his efforts? Fired. So there's a lot of people who like James Borrego. Has been mentioned all summer or all off season as a candidate with the Lakers, has interviewed with the Cavs. So I would think that those two would be your top 2 at the moment, but it's fluid and it can really change with new candidates emerging or depending on the interviews.
Are any of these guys the quote-unquote offensive guru? In other words, where I'm going with this, is there a guy that can figure out how to use Evan Mobley so you don't have to turn him into a three-point shooter? Because he's athletic enough, you should be able to move him around and make him a threat offensively.
Yeah, I think that's a big reason why the Cavs decided to let J.B. Bickerstaff go, was because you weren't seeing that offensive growth from Evan Mobley. That wasn't the only reason, but it was part of the reason. And Mobley's number across the board, but just slightly. And I think the Cavs are waiting for him to take that next leap. So whoever the next coach is, that's going to be a big part of their job description, and part of their responsibility is to get Evan Mobley from pretty good offensive player to great offensive player, and to reach the potential that the Cavaliers believe he has in terms of an offensive player. Defensively, he's already fantastic. You don't have any worries there. Offensively, it's, let's assume that Donovan Mitchell signs this extension. How do you get Evan Mobley to get to that next level while playing next to an elite guard? That's, I wouldn't be surprised if that's one of the exact questions during the interviews when the Cavs were talking to coaches. So, yeah, that's the idea, is to get him to another level.
Is you mentioned Atkinson with Steve Kerr. Is the Warriors' offense a different offensive system? Is there a system that you can kind of look to and say they do things a little differently than the Cavs? There's a lot of them that you can say that offensively with the Cavs about. Is there one that makes sense with what the Cavs have personnel-wise?
Yeah, I mean, what probably is working in Kenny Atkinson's favor is the fact that Mike Brown, you look at how he coached when he was a coach in Cleveland, right? I mean, I remember Mike Brown telling me the uglier the game, the better. And then he went to the Warriors, where, you're coaching under Steve Kerr, and it has a whole nother level of offensive, strategy and ball movement and crispness. And then you see Mike Brown, after a couple years with Steve Kerr, go to the Sacramento Kings, and he's clearly revamped his philosophy, because the Kings are one of the highest scoring teams in the league. They play far from ugly basketball. They play beautiful basketball. And this is exactly the opposite of what Mike Brown was with the Cavs after a couple years with the Warriors. So I think that, yes, look, you go to a different system as an assistant coach, in this case, Kenny Atkinson, and you take things from Steve Kerr that you've picked up that, to your next job, just as Mike Brown did. Theoretically, that's what Kenny Atkinson would bring, some of that Warriors offense that, when they were younger, went to the finals, 5 straight years. So, I think there's a lot of that, that the Cavs are looking at. Like, look at the difference in Mike Brown after he went to the Warriors, and how sharp the Kings are offensively. And can Kenny Atkinson do that himself after a brief run with the Warriors?
So, the big question again is Donovan Mitchell. The Cavs can't offer him the extension until, a couple of weeks. It's late in June. He can't sign it until sometime in July. Do you get a sense that Mitchell will sign that extension? Or do you get a sense one way or another?
Yeah, I don't have a sense I don't think anybody really does in terms of what he's actually going to do, but I know that the Cavs are optimistic. A lot of teams that I've talked to, opposing teams, think he's going to take that extension, which would be 4 years, and there's a couple of reasons. Number one is the Cavs can pay him more than anybody else, and it's by a long shot. And look, Mitchell's a great player, but marketability-wise, he's not up there with the LeBron James and Kevin Durant's of the world. So as one opposing GM told me, Donovan Mitchell's not going to make up that money if he declines that extension and goes somewhere else, eventually. So, that's the thing about it, is he's probably not going to make up that money. Number two, and I've really believed this, and I've heard it a lot and talked to Donovan Mitchell about it, he likes Cleveland. He likes the organization. He's brought a real camaraderie to the team in the locker room, and everybody on the team has responded well to that. And even around, the front office and all those guys, it's contagious. And I think that he's content in Cleveland. And when you're happy somewhere and you can get paid more there than anywhere else, then why not stay? And I can tell you, Donovan Mitchell believes what the front office believes, which is, hey, we get another, we get Evan Mobley to rise his game a little bit, and then we get, on top of that, just some more time together. He believes that the Cavs can be contenders with just a few minor things happening, and I think that that's really high, in terms of things he's considering and priorities, and a reason why the Cavs are so optimistic that he will remain in Cleveland, and sign that extension. So I think it's, I would be shocked. I don't want to say shocked, but I'd be pretty surprised if he didn't sign the extension and decided that he wanted to trade. I'd be surprised by that.
Yeah, we've heard the reports that that Mitchell is without question happy. We've also heard some reports, Sam, that if Donovan Mitchell does re-sign, Darius Garland in his camp would then request a trade. What do you make of those reports?
I think that there's a truth behind those. I think that the Cavs themselves have started to wonder if, after 2 years together, if Garland and Mitchell are fit together. It sounds like Darius Garland's camp. Rich Paul, his agent, who obviously is, represents LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Draymond Green, Zach LaVine, a whole list of them, is also Darius Garland's agent. And I think that they're wondering if Darius is a fit. I can tell you that the two players themselves, Mitchell and Garland, really like each other. They have a great relationship on and off the floor. But, it's just like any other job almost. If you're working with somebody and you're not really in tune with them as much as you may like them personally, you may feel as if you're not a fit next to them. And, I think that the Cavs kind of think that too. Before these reports came out, I think that the Cavs were thinking, boy, are Garland and Mitchell a fit? And if not, are we gonna have to? We're not gonna move Darius Garland, so or I'm sorry, we're not gonna move Donovan Mitchell. So the natural guy to go would be Garland. So I think that there's some truth to that, and that's going to be something really to keep an eye on. After the Cavs aren't even going to worry about that, and neither will Darius Garland until we find out what Donovan Mitchell does.
But we're going to worry about that, assuming that they do that.
Of course.
Who are some guys that you might be? We've heard names. You've heard, I think it's Brandon Ingram from the Pelicans. You've heard Keldon Johnson from the Spurs. Do either of those guys, in your mind, fit with what would be a core with the Cavs?
Yeah, I would think both of them would. Ingram, obviously the better player, at least this point in his career. I know that the Pelicans would have an interest in Garland, if they decide to move on from Ingram, and they've got a contract situation there developing with Ingram and the Pelicans. And like I said, old friend David Griffin. So that would be a natural trade partner because the salaries match. And I know that the Spurs would certainly have an interest in Darius Garland with Victor Wembanyama. And his development. Keldon Johnson, very underrated player, been, kind of kept under the radar. And again, he's a small forward shooting guard, wing type, who I think would fit in well with the Cavs. Brandon Ingram, obviously, if he can stay healthy, is a borderline all-star, if not a flat-out all-star. So, those are players that are linked to the Cavs for a reason because they make sense. And I think that, if the Cavs are going to move Darius Garland, obviously they're going to want somebody who can kind of make a splash in terms of not only his name recognition, but a guy who fits very well next to Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen as well.
Sam Amico, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. I am sure we will check back in with you as we move along in this offseason towards Donovan Mitchell and the new coach. Thanks so much, Sam. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a lot for having me. We will talk to you soon.
Sam Amico from HoopsWire.com. Make sure you check him out. Really good stuff, not only regarding the Cavs, but the NBA as a whole. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.